Hi, I want to tell you about a woman who had everything figured out. She'd taken an $8 million company and grew it to $220 million. She sat on boards. She trained her whole industry. She wrote articles that other people quoted. And when she walked into a room, people knew her name. And then one weekend, she went down to the shore to rest because she was tired. You know, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. And she had a stroke, and the words just stopped. Now, figuratively, literally, the thing she was best at in her entire world, communicating, leading, speaking, was taking right out of her mouth. The woman was me. And in the span of 6 weeks, I lost my words. I lost my mother, and I lost my job. 5 days after I came back to work, I got fired. If you're listening to this and you feel like the person that used to be is just gone, like you're standing in the wreckage of a life that used to have your name on it, then this episode's for you. Hi, I'm Kelly DeAndre, and this is Stronger Than Before. So let's get into it. Okay, welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Here's what I want to do today. I want to talk about something I called identity collapse. And I want to be very specific, because this is not the same thing as a bad season. It is not the same thing as burnout, although burnout can be part of it. And it's not even the same thing as grief, although grief is almost always tangled up in it. Identity collapse is what happens when the things that you built your sense of self on, you know, your title, your role, your body, your relationships, your reputation, it gets pulled out from under you. And suddenly you're not sure who you even are without them. For high achievers, and I'm talking to the high achievers today, the women who've always been the capable ones, the one who figures it out, the one everybody leans on, identity collapse hits differently because we just don't just have achievements. We are our achievements, or we think we are. We are welded our worth to our output. So when the output stops, it can feel like you stopped. I lived it. And then I built a way out of it, and I call it Stronger. And it's a framework. It's a course. It's the spine of coaching I do. And it leans on cognitive behavioral tools, on faith as I understand it, and frankly, a lot of hard-won, gritty personal experience. By the end of today, I want you to walk away with two things. I want you to walk away with a clear understanding of what's actually happening to you when your identity collapses, because naming it is half the battle. And a handful of concrete tools you can start using today to rebuild an identity that no title, no trauma, and no transition can ever take away from you again. That's the promise. So let's earn it. Okay, I have to tell you the whole thing because the tools won't make sense without it. And honestly, I think you need to hear from that person teaching you that I didn't read it in a book. I bled for it. So here's what I want to say. I was a rock star for years. For years, I have been able to go into an industry. I was able to lead the industry and grow a company, grow people. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying it because you have to understand the height to understand the fall. I came up in a family-run business. I was president, and I took that company from 8 million to 220 million. 220. I lived it and I breathed it. The industry knew me. I trained people. I wrote the articles. I sat on boards. And if you asked me who I was, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. I knew. I was the woman who built things, the woman who delivered, the closer. And here's the thing about family businesses, though. There's a ceiling, and it's usually shaped like a last name. The son was ready to step into the CEO's seat, and he and I, well, we'd always been in alignment. There was no villain in this part of the story, but the math was the math, so I was let go. And I thought, fine, okay, I'm too big for this anyway. I'll go play in the major leagues. This is it. So I took a position at a $1 billion division in my local area. $1 billion with a B. And I remember thinking, God, this is it. This is the thing I've been building towards my whole life. I've made it. But here's what nobody saw. Behind the scenes, the floor was cracking. My mother had just been diagnosed with cancer. Not a, we caught it early cancer, the kind that takes you down. And my family, the same family I built that first company with, was fighting, coming apart at exactly the moment I needed them whole. And the new job? Well, I want you to picture my first day. The day I'm supposed to walk in and be an executive. Nobody there knew I was coming. I sat in the lobby for 45 minutes. 45 minutes in the lobby. I am the newest executive on day one while people scrambled to figure out who I was. And then when I walked me back to my office, it was a storage unit. Furniture stacked on furniture, boxes everywhere. Nobody had even cleared a space for me to sit. That was the welcome, and it was a sign. Death by 1,000 cuts. My new boss and I never connected. Couldn't form a relationship, no matter what I tried. He'd bring in the CEO around and not tell me. He would set up me for meetings and ask questions. I wasn't prepared. In front of people, knowing I didn't have the answer yet, and then I could hear the snicker under his breath. The team was all men, and there's a particular kind of exclusion that's almost worse than being shouted out in the room. It's being left near the room, and they do that guy talk or the deal making, the bonding, just close enough that I could hear it and far enough that I was never in it. Present, but invisible. I was the executive on the outside of our own organization. And I stayed. And you want to know why I stayed? I stayed for my mother because I was not going to fall apart and add to her worry while she was fighting for her life. I was going to be strong. I was going to hold it together because that's what we do. That's who I am. So I'm in the middle of a high-end presentation, high stakes, polished room, all eyes on me, and I noticed something strange. My words are getting tight, like they're catching on something. And I'm exhausted, bone deep exhausted. And I think, God, thank God we have vacation this weekend. My family comes in town, we take a few weeks, and we vacation through August. I just have to make it to the weekend. I made it to the weekend. I went down to the shore to rest, and then I had a stroke. And the words, the very thing I had just felt go tight in the boardroom, the words that were taken from me, there's a name for it. It's called aphasia. When the stroke damages the part of your brain that handles language, and the words you've had your whole life just won't come. Think about that. The communicator, the trainer, the woman who built her entire identity on being articulate, being persuasive, sharp, I couldn't reliably get a sentence out. 2 weeks after my stroke, my mother passed. The mother I had endured all of it for, gone. We decided not to tell her. So as she laid sickly in her bed, I sat there next to her holding her hand and just shook my head because my brain was healing. I took short-term disability because I had a stroke, and I went back to work in the middle of December, still putting myself back together word by word. 5 days later, they fired me. 5 days. And because apparently the universe wasn't finished, I was in a toxic relationship at the time. You know, the kind that isolates you, the kind that leaves you alone in the exact moment you most need someone to sit beside you in the dark. So let me count it up for you. In a matter of weeks, I lost my voice, my mother, my job, and any sense that I had a single person in my corner. That, my friend, is identity collapse. And I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because I came out on the other side. But I built a map on the way out, and I'm about to hand it to you. Let me make this useful, because a story without a framework is just a sad story. And I'm not in the business of sad stories. I'm in the business of rebuilding. It usually starts as imposter syndrome, but it's more than that. When I moved to the billion-dollar division, the very first thing I felt was imposter syndrome. You know, that little voice, do I really belong here? Am I going to get found out? You know, all of that's in your head. Now, here's what I want you to hear, because it matters. Imposter syndrome by itself, most high achievers have tools for that. You felt it before. You walked in scared and you proved yourself, and you feel faded. You knew how to do that. You knew how to get beyond that. But identity collapse isn't imposter syndrome. Identity collapse is what happens when imposter syndrome shows up and then the floor caves in. Trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. Faster than you can process any single one of them. It's the difference between I'm not sure I belong here and I'm not sure who I even am anymore. For me, it was imposter syndrome plus a hostile workplace, plus my mother dying, plus a stroke that took my words, plus getting fired, plus an isolated relationship stacked. Compounded. No room to breathe between blows. Why high achievers collapse harder? Well, here's the unfortunate truth about us. We are more vulnerable to identity collapse, not less. And it's precisely because we have been so successful. When you spent your whole life being praised for what you produce, the growth, the title, the results, the name, people you know, you slowly start to believe that's what production is. You believe that production is the person, that you are only as valuable as your last win. So we built our identity on sand that can be washed away. Job titles can be taken. Body that performs can fail. Relationships that define you can leave. Reputation can be forgotten in a quarter. And when one of those gets pulled, it doesn't feel like losing a thing. It feels like losing yourself. Naming it is the first tool. So here's the first tool, and it's free. And it's a powerful, powerful tool. You need to name it. When you can say, this is an identity collapse, this is a known thing, it has shaped and it has an exit, you stop drowning in the formless, terrifying, what is wrong with me? And you start standing on solid ground. You move from being the victim of the storm to being the person reading the map of the storm. In cognitive behavioral terms, you can't change a thought you can't see. The fog itself is part of what keeps you stuck. So we name it identity collapse. Say it out loud. There. Now we can work with it. Okay, so here's the part you came for. How do you actually rebuild? I want to give you 5 habits, 5 practices that I build in the wreckage that I now teach. And I want to be honest with you about something. I didn't invent every one of these from scratch. Smart people have known some of these for a long time. What I did was test them in a worst season of my life. And I can tell you which ones actually hold weight when everything else is on fire. You want to change your habits and change your whole life. Not because it's a cute slogan, because your future is hidden inside your daily routine. Show me a single ordinary Tuesday in your life, and I can tell you where you're headed. So let me give you the 5. Are you ready? Okay, tool number 1. You need to reclaim your words. I'm starting here because this is my scar. And because it's the foundation of everything I teach. When the stroke took my words, I had to get them back, one at a time. And in that process, I learned something I will believe until the day I die. The words you say about yourself are not describing your life. They are building it. This is a straight cognitive behavioral therapy, dressed up in my own story. Your thoughts drive your feelings drive your behaviors drive your life. And the thoughts you repeat the most, those become the most truest thing about you, whether they're accurate or not. So when you're in a collapse, listen to what you're saying. I'll never get that back. I'm not who I used to be. I've lost my edge. Every time you say that, you're pouring the foundation of the very life you're terrified of. So we do the opposite. We build a set of true and forward-leaning statements that we say them on purpose, out loud, every single day. Even when, especially when we don't believe them yet. I am rebuilding. My words are coming back. I am more than my last title. I am still here, and I am still becoming. You will believe your own voice before you believe anyone else's, and I'm living proof. The woman who sat in the storage unit office could not have spoken to you for 45 minutes today, but I told myself I'd get my words back. And here we are. Okay, tool 2 is you need to get clear on the final scene. When you're in a collapse, you cannot see 2 feet in front of you. The fog is total. So most people make the mistake of trying to plan the next step when they have no idea where they're going. Here's a better way, and I borrowed it from how filmmakers actually work. A film director doesn't start with scene 1. They start with the final scene. They decide exactly how the story ends, and then they build backwards towards it. Do that with your life. Don't ask, what do I do tomorrow? Ask, how do I want this chapter to end? Picture it. It's 1 year from today. You're telling a friend, this was the year I came back. What had to happen for that to be true? Did you launch that thing? Did you leave that relationship that isolates you? Did you stop measuring your worth by a title? Did you finally rest without guilt? Whatever it is, write it down. You will never leave where you are until you can clearly see where you'd rather be. As long as your vision is blurry, you stay parked. Clear the windshield first and the road comes after. Tool number 3 is you need to feed your mind on purpose. When the whole world fell apart, my brain did not default to helpful thoughts. Left to its own devices, my mind ran the highlight reel of every loss on a loop. So I had to take charge of what went in. Garbage in, garbage out. That's just not about food. It's about information. It's about conversations, the media you marinate in, the voices in your ear. So I got deliberate. I read things that rebuilt me. I listened to things that built my capacity instead of draining it. And this is the cheap, brilliant version I use the time I've already had. The commute, the walk, the 20 minutes getting ready. I stopped letting that time fill with noise and I started feeding it on purpose. And here's a phrase that changed me from Jim Rohn. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. If you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, on your mind, your healing, your growth, you'll rebuild a life. And in collapse, you are the project. You are the work. So you want to rebuild your life on purpose. Tool number 4 is choose your circle like your life depends upon it, because it does. Remember, when I collapsed, I was in a relationship that left me alone. That isolation didn't cause the collapse, but it absolutely deepened it and slowed the decline out. And here, it is a hard, true thing. You become the average of the people you spend your time with. When you're rebuilding an identity, the people around you are either holding the ladder or sitting on your shoulders. So make the list. Generally, who in your life drags you back down to the version of you that's collapsed, and who calls forward the version of you that's rising? Spend less time, much less, with the first group, and spend as much time as you possibly can with the second. And if your circle is empty right now, if collapse left you isolated the way it left me, then your first job isn't to find your people. It's to become the kind of presence you're looking for. Getting rooms, get coaching, get a community. You cannot rebuild a self in solitary confinement. Tool 5 is move your body. The on-ramp to everything else I left this last on purpose because people roll their eyes at it, and then it turns out to be the keystone. When you're in a collapse, the body is the first place you can win. You can't always control your circumstances. You can't control your grief or who fired you, but you can take a 20-minute walk, and 20 minutes a day is 10 hours a month invested in the one vehicle that has to carry you through all of this. Stop waiting for the hour you don't have. Use the 20 minutes you do, and don't frame it as a fitness goal you'll get to later. Frame it as this is just what I do now. I don't ask myself if I feel like brushing my teeth, I just do it. Same with movement. It becomes part of who you are, not a hard thing you're trying to start on Monday. And here's why it's secretly the most important tool. Movement is the one that makes the other 4 possible. It clears the fog so you can think the new thoughts. It steadies you enough to see the final scene. It gives you energy to feed your mind, and it shows up for people. It's the on-ramp, and you need to take it. So let me bring it all the way back around. Reclaim your words, see the final seed. Feed your mind, choose your circle, and move your body. 5 habits, and I'll tell you the truth about all of them. The hardest part is the launch. Think about it. Think about a rocket. The single hardest, most fuel-hungry moment of the entire journey isn't the part out in open space, it's the takeoff. The launch burns more fuel than the rest of the flight combined. Why? Because in those first few seconds, the rocket is fighting gravity, the pull of everything that wants to keep it on the ground. Your collapse has gravity. The old story has gravity. I'm not who I used to be has gravity. And starting these habits in the wreckage when you have the least energy you've ever had, that is the launch. That is the hardest fuel burn of your life. But here's what I know, because I broke that pull myself. Once you break it, there is no stopping you. I am the woman who lost her words, her mother, her job in 6 weeks. I am the woman who sat for 45 minutes in a lobby while a company decided whether I existed. I am the woman who is talking to you clearly for this time right now because I built an identity that the stroke couldn't take, the firing couldn't take, the grief couldn't take. That's what I want for you. An identity no title can take, no trauma can take, no transition can take. You are not your last win. You are not your worst season. You are not the version of you that collapsed. You are the one who rebuilds, and you're going to be stronger than before. If this hits home, if you heard your story somewhere in mine, I want you to know there's a whole framework behind these 5 tools. It's called Stronger, and I built it from a cognitive behavioral science on faith, which I think of as energy, the current that runs through all of us. And on the hardest year of my life, it's a course, and it's the foundation of the coaching I do with women who are exactly where you might be right now. If you're interested, please go to kellydeandrea.com and look under course. I would love for you to be part of that program. Whether you are in collapse today, or if you're still sitting in the lobby, or even if you can't find your words yet, I promise you the climb out is real because I made it. I'm Kelly DeAndrea, and this has been Stronger Than Before.